Today marks 1 year of the farmer agitation which has been going on, and it was marked by the various farmer groups by a Bharat bandh called in different states of the country. Now, while the farmer groups claim that the bandh was a success, there are some states and their administration that is saying that it didn't make too much of a difference. But the question of whether the Bharat bandh was a success or not is really not the moot point. Yes, there were traffic jams and snarls in some areas. In some areas there was an impact and in some areas there wasn't. A year later, what we need to ask is what is happening with the farm laws, their implementation, and what is happening with this agitation. Is there enough of an effort being made to broker peace? Are the hopes of a breakthrough now dwindling? Now, to speak on this, I am joined by Siraj Hussain, former Agricultural Secretary, and Devinder Sharma, Food and Agriculture Policy Expert. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for speaking with us on this subject. Mr. Hussain, let's start with a part of what has happened with the farm laws in this last 1 year. Technically, they have been passed. Parliament has passed them. Have they shown any impact on ground, considering that the government says there is only a small proportion of farmers who are protesting this and the rest are pretty happy? Has anything actually moved in terms of implementation?
Thank you for inviting me. There are two things. Number one, the farm laws have been stayed by the Supreme Court. So technically, the position is that laws have not been implemented. However, we do not know the full impact on the ground because sufficient data is not available. However, media reports suggest that in certain states like Madhya Pradesh, a number of APMC mandis have closed down, as a result of which the farmers are now forced to sell outside. And thirdly, the government has itself used the Essential Commodities Act to impose stock limits on pulses and edible oils. So what can one say about the impact of the farm laws when the indications are so contrary to each other?
Okay. Devinder Sharma, then the question comes to what is essentially a political one, because the farmers have been agitating. They've been agitating for nearly a year now. The government keeps saying that, we're ready to talk to them anywhere, anytime, but there has been no movement forward. Why do you think this is the case? Is the government hoping that since there has not been an actual implementation per se, that this trouble and this protest will just fizzle out? Are they waiting for that to happen?
Well, we all know that the government thinks this protest should have fizzled out by now. But even 1 year, to carry it for 1 year is not a small achievement for any protest organizers, who are leading the protest. I think since it's the world's biggest protest now and the longest also, I think the message is quite clear that the farmers are not going to give up. That's something which is very clearly written on the wall. Now, the government is not withdrawing or not going for a talk, or there is a statement that exists, is primarily because as you rightly said, that the government thinks it's a protest which is restricted to the few of these northwestern regions, and the rest of the country is okay with it. So that is why the farmers pressure to see that in the next elections, at least in the western Uttar Pradesh region, they build up a kind of a protest or kind of a demand which or influence over the voters that they can take a position very clearly. So that, I think, is going to be the deciding factor. So let's wait and watch for that. But in the meanwhile, I think the farmers are also adamant that they are not going to give up. And I read the statement somewhere that one of the leaders said that we are even willing to sit for another 10 years if we need to.
Wow. So, Devinder Sharma, if the Supreme Court has, as of now, stayed the farm law implementation and state governments are deciding what to do, which anyway they could have, what is going to be the purpose of this protest for much longer? Why do you think it has continued despite the Supreme Court's action?
Well, I think let's be very clear. What the Supreme Court has said is that they have stayed the laws for implementation for 1.5 years. But I think the more important thing is what the farmers are fearing, or what the farmers are calling for is the withdrawal of these laws, but because they believe that once these laws comes into place, they will be driven out of farming and their incomes will drop further. And already we have seen the situational assessment survey of the NSO telling us that in 2018-19, the average income of a farmer from crop cultivation alone, and I'm not talking about the non-farm income that he or she gets, is only rupees 27 per day. Now, if that is the kind of income, the paltry income that a farmer is getting, I think we need to understand why the farmers have that ability or are continuing with their protest for almost 1 year now. I think the reason is very clear. It's a compound anger over the last few decades of the neglect and denial of income. That is what has brought them onto the streets. And I'm sure you will agree, it's not easy to continue sleeping on the streets for almost a year now. I think we need to understand that the reason must be very compelling for farmers that they have taken to streets and in such a large numbers. So I think the government needs to respect that and needs to accept that at the same time and open up a dialogue again, because we need a solution as early as possible.
Siraj Hussain, why do you think there has been no breakthrough, no solution, even a year after protests, even after the Supreme Court staying the implementation of the farm laws for a year and a half? Why are we still in this limbo?
I wish I knew the answer, but I can guess. And my guess is that the government perhaps thinks that the farmers who are agitating in Delhi and Punjab, Haryana, Western UP do not have support across India. That is what I think the government has in mind. And therefore, there may be a thinking in the government that once the support withers away or the farmers who are agitating here get tired, then government will be able to continue with these laws. So that, but it is only my guess or my assessment. It may or may not be correct. I think government will take into account the political cost as we reach nearer the elections.
Is this now become just a political issue? At the end of the day, this was about reforming agriculture. Let's go back to the beginning and the basics of the whole farm laws, Mr. Siraj Hussain. At that time, many experts were quite happy with what the laws envisioned. At least on paper, they thought it was a good way to shake up some of the issues in the agricultural sector, bring in more investments, bring in more incomes and increase farmer incomes. Is that view changing, do you think, a year later?
I think there is a realization now in all the quarters that withering away of APMCs will not be beneficial for the farmers. And therefore, we do need competition, no doubt. Even earlier, all the experts were of the view that APMCs need to have competition. But I think there is a realization now that if APMCs disappear or become very weak because of this differential taxation, then there will be no way to discover the price. And then the private trade, which is allowed to buy freely without any tax, without any paperwork, without any license, in the trade area outside the APMCs will have a field day. And the farmers think that Himachal Pradesh apple pricing this year is sending a signal that we do need competition to the private trade in the form of APMCs, and we also need competition to APMCs. So I think some balancing needs to be done, but this absolutely free, no holds barred trade area concept, I think is under examination, would be under examination even by the central government. And Maharashtra is in the process of enacting a law which will address these issues.
Mr. Sharma, will it eventually come down to justice as far as implementation of these laws are concerned? I want to, the politics will unfold as it will. You have a huge election in UP coming up. We have to see what happens there. We have to see how, political parties backing this farmers' agitation actually find success, and if they do. But coming down to the actual plight of the farmers, do you think that these laws will eventually, be implemented in some form or fashion, or they will have to be taken back?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm very happy that there is a realization now happening that these laws were not designed properly. And that, I think, is something we must all accept. There is a dominant economic thinking that these laws will bring price discovery, bring in investments, and bring in more mandis or markets, private markets, and then price discovery. But I think as someone who has maintained from the very beginning that this entire idea or concept has failed across the world. And in no commodity that I know of anywhere in the world have farmers gained, or the markets have been able to prop up farm income. See, farmers are surviving in the developed countries, it is because they are getting massive subsidies by way of even direct income support. Just to give you an example, in the United States of America, from where we cut and paste this laws into India, in America, 40% of the average farm income is actually coming from subsidies. If the markets were so good, I don't see any reason why America should be providing that massive subsidy support to their farmers. Come to European Union, 50% of the farmers' income today is comprising of subsidies. It tells us very clearly that markets have failed everywhere in the world to provide farmers with the right kind of income. I think India needs to understand that just copy-pasting those laws into India is not going to help the farming community to raise their income. I think what we need is a different approach, and we need to gain from our strength, draw from our strengths, and evolve laws which can really, in the long term, help agriculture get out of the agrarian distress that it has been struggling to survive with all these decades. So I am sure that in the days to come, in the months to come, we will see a broader thinking evolving in this country, which will call for a revisit of these laws to prepare a new set of laws which actually should be beneficial to farmers. Let's not worry about too much about the value chains. Value chains need to adjust to this changing situation, and we cannot go on and on with the same exploitative nature. Just to give you one example, is that if you look at America and Europe, the bananas is the cheapest fruit available is banana. But do we know that at the end of the value chain, if you see the farmers who produce that banana in the Latin American countries or Central American countries just get 5 to 9% of the end price of consumers. Look at the chocolate as an industry, $1 billion industry, $200 billion industry, and what the cocoa growers is getting less than the price of a chocolate bar every day as income. Now that is what has drawn economists like Jeffrey Sachs to stand with the cocoa growers and demand that a global fund be created so that we can provide farmers with income. And let's not forget, in the chocolate business, we have all the big companies, or most of these big companies that are there are big giants. And then, if they have a competition, I don't know why it is not helping to raise the income of the cocoa growers. I can go on with several examples across the globe, and I think it is time we learn from them and draw up new laws that India requires.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we have to keep the focus on why all of this has been started and why it's important to give farmers their due, to provide food security for India. And we also have to keep in mind many other important factors like climate change and how it ties into agriculture. It's not as much as part of the conversation as it needs to be. But meanwhile, we still continue in this stalemate between farmer groups and the government. Let's hope for a solution soon. Thank you so much, Mr. Devinder Sharma and Mr. Siraj Hussain, for joining us on this leg of the conversation. We'll take a very short break and be right back with more on the India Development Debate.